Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome to my hobby blog. Today we are doing the fourth and final October 2022 Vinegar Syndrome subscription package review for the film from 1988, or 84, I apologize. It's a British horror film directed by Edward Purdom and also Alan Birkinshaw. And there's a whole lot going on in regards to the behind the scenes for that, which I will explain later. But the film that I am talking about today, which I have to censor the cover of, is Don't Open Till Christmas. This movie is one that I think everybody should be watching this holiday. I enjoyed the heck out of it. It was so much fun. The music is just absolutely perfect. There's a lot going on here, and I just sort of want to give my first impressions that I wrote down as I was watching this movie, because this movie is very typical of the genre, and I will get into that soon. But we start right off the bat with an awesome beginning kill scene, just like a Friday the 13th movie, or Black Christmas, I believe, starts right off the bat with a murder. The burning sleepaway camp has a little bit of a intro kill, but this one is a lot of fun because Santa is killed, and we see it in full bloody glory. It is absolutely amazing. And then we get into the intro, which is very, very reminiscent of John Carpenter's Halloween. All of them, I guess, do it, but that's the original one. Instead of the pumpkin slowly burning and the credits going right beside it, instead we have a Christmas elf that gets caught on fire at the top of its little hat, and it slowly goes down the flames until finally it's just a pile of molten plastic. And while that's happening, we get the intro credits and an awesome synthesizer heavy theme song, which is basically just the On the 12th Day of Christmas song played on synthesizer. This entire movie has an incredible score. This is originally was supposed to be an Italian production, from what the assistant director was talking about, or the co-director, but ends up that the Hammer Horror House, which produced and created all of the very popular Hammer horror films, they got the access to the script and decided to, fuck it, we'll make it now. And this was in the kind of middle of the video nasty era, which was very interesting to see, which I didn't even process while watching. But the special features discuss all about that. It's really fascinating. But then we go on to a very rocking Christmas party where everybody is getting naked, everybody's dancing. There's a whole lot of basically disco lights going off. We have, again, a kind of synthesizer heavy music going on, but we also have a rock band that is playing on full drums, guitar, keyboard, of course, for the synthesizer, and then, of course, the bass guitar, so on and so forth, singers, everything. And it really reminded me of, well, before I get into that, at the end of this scene, we get Santa Claus, whose daughter is actually the main character of this movie. And he is killed by a spear through the mouth, which is very sort of reminiscent of Christmas Evil, which is a film that Vinegar Syndrome has also released. And that movie is one of my favorites too, and I've seen it a couple times now, a couple Christmases in a row. And I'm really looking forward to rewatching it again this year, and especially with the John Waters audio commentary track. I still haven't listened to it, although I should by this point, but I've been trying to save that for this year. But this movie is very Hack-O-Lantern like. This would make a very great double feature with Hack-O-Lantern, in my opinion. But I don't know when somebody would ever do a double feature like that, because you can't be really watching a Halloween specific movie and a Christmas specific movie. But Hack a Lantern basically has the exact same story as this movie, which is that a serial killer is on the loose killing Santa Claus, and nobody knows who it is, and there's a lot of mystery going on. And the final reveal of it is pretty lame in Hack a Lantern, but in this movie, it is so much better. So well done. I really enjoyed the reveal of that. But we get a introduction to the Santa Claus killer about 15 minutes in, roughly. And right away in my head, I was like, oh my god, it's Driller Killer from the Abel Ferrara film. And this character is somebody who I think would fit right in with a 70s exploitation film. And this movie was made in 1984. And it is kind of amazing to sort of see all these different overlaps with many different genres and time periods of film, because I'll get into that later. I really enjoyed one particular kill. All of the kills in this movie are amazing. They are so bloody, makeup heavy. The makeup looks good. It doesn't look awful. This is basically a Friday the 13th movie, but happening during Christmas, and there's a reason why, and I'll tell you later when I discuss the supplemental material. But there's a kill in this movie where the serial killer targeting Santa Claus kills Santa while he's drunk and in an alleyway with a burn barrel and a grill, and he's making dinner or a snack or something, and the killer comes up with barbed wire and just chokes him out, and then pushes him onto the grill and cooks him, and then he explodes into flames, and it is absolutely hilarious. And I had a lot of fun because most of the kills in this movie were like that. I highly recommend everybody to watch it, but one issue that I had, which I didn't even realize was actually something that everybody knew of behind the scenes, is that the storyline is so weird, so disjointed, so bizarre. It doesn't feel like a single movie. And it ends up that it wasn't a single movie, because and that's really all my first impressions. So I'm going to go into one of the new supplemental interviews with the co-director Alan Birkinshaw, who is a familiar name to me because he has written so many movies in the 70s and 80s. And there were 3 movies total that he had made before this film. And all of them were cheap Italian and Filipino exploitation films. And this one, he came on because the original director, Edward, let me make sure I have his name right, Edward Purdom, he apparently had no business being the director. He was somebody from the 1950s who was a pretty popular actor during that time. And this is another kind of overlap that I was talking about earlier, is that this was his only film that he ever directed. And it is really interesting to see sort of the performances, because it does feel like a 1950s movies at times, especially when our characters are interacting with the police, and it feels very serialized. And apparently the movie was such a fucking mess that Alan Birkinshaw came in and was like, we're taking this out, we're taking this out, we're going to put in this scene, we're going to put in this scene. And he basically remade the movie from scratch. And he ended up not really doing it from scratch. I did not mean to say it like that, but he basically put in the 2 elements that really make this movie work, which is the I'm trying to find the note. I apologize. He brought in Alan Lake, who is one of the major actors in this movie. He's, I think, the co-lead. And he is investigating who the serial killer was. That plot was non-existent in the original print of the movie. And he was like, we're putting him in, and we're going to have an entire plot line surrounding that. That way, this movie just has a through line from beginning to end that everybody can sort of follow. And that was so sort of it was so smart for him to do that because he also brought in the villain storyline, and there's a lot going on between that villain who was killing all the Santa Clauses, and also of the investigator who is looking for this killer. Those two elements are so important to me because those were the elements that made this movie work so well. This movie, at times, I was like, man, if they did not have those two, because I was watching the documentary afterwards, and I was kind of thinking, like, wow, if they did not have that villain storyline and also that actor investigating, this movie would have just been total nonsense. And I understand now why they kind of remade the movie and kept a lot of the original print, but then were like, okay, we need a scene here explaining this. We need a scene here explaining this. And it works out so well. This movie was absolutely awesome. I would not give it a 5 star, maybe a 4.5, maybe 4 on Letterboxd. But one thing that's interesting is that the producer and also editor Dick Randall was involved in this movie, and he has done so many exploitation movies throughout cinema. He has done about 60 exploitation films, and one of them was one that I think not interviewed, but uh, talked about during Spooktober. And if I didn't, I definitely did a review on Letterboxd called "Escape from Women's Prison," and that movie is all about. It's basically a home invasion movie, but one of the main draws of exploitation is the poster art, where they make the poster first and they try to sell the movie and then they go shoot the movie. And when they made that movie, Dick Randall was like, women prison films, they're very popular right now, let's make one, or at least let's uh, have a poster for it so we can make a lot of money and then use that money to make a different movie. And this was happening all over the place. And they both started working together during the Filipino exploitation films, which a lot of women in camp, women in prison films were made during that time in the, I think, early 70s to late 70s. And Alan Birkinshaw talked about how at one point, before he made this movie, he wanted to be a director, but he had made 3 movies, and he said it was the hardest experience of his life. When he was making his first movie, it was so logistically complicated. There were a lot of things just not working behind the scenes. He said it was impossible for him to try and raise money for his next feature that he wanted to make. And so because he was part of the Hammer House Horror of which I've talked about already, and he had an office there, and Dick Randall, who was very popular in America, he is actually one of the ones who brought the Shaw Brothers to the West while he was working in America. And he, I believe, also produced. No, he didn't. Somebody else. I apologize. But they too, both of them, heard about this movie being made because they worked in the same office as the director, and they were hearing a lot of kind of complaints from the producers of the movie and sort of the studio saying, oh my gosh, nothing makes sense, we need somebody to come in and fix it. And Alan Birkinshaw, he's mainly a writer in these exploitation films, and so he was like, and he was known for coming in kind of in the final stages of filming or production and fixing the movie for the directors. So they brought him in and said, fix it. Put in whatever you want. Don't delete half of the movie. Just add to it. Don't delete. And so he said, okay. and he put in those two elements, and it really worked out, in my opinion, uh, which I've talked about ad nauseum at this point. But that interview was very interesting. It was that and the documentary, the archival documentary that was made around the time when the movie was being made that I watched. And so next I want to sort of talk about that. It starts right off the bat with Dick Randall and the producer talking about the different shots and explaining all the different choices they were making. And the shot that they were talking about in specific is when two women wearing Santa Claus robes like these. I need to cover up the nudity here. Just like those robes here. Um, the scene involved two of them walking in going, "Hi, are you a character? Don't open till Christmas." And they open the robes. And the two shots that they had filmed for this scene was one where they had bras on, and then one where they did not have bras on. And they were going back and forth between should we have bras on or not, and they decided, yes, we will have bras on. We will not have them be heavily naked, because this was made during the video nasty era. So making horror movies was instantly just like, bam. It was labeled as a either section 3 or section 2 if it was really bad. And they were like, okay, we need to keep it on the down low and try to get this passed without any censors or any changes. And then we get just from beginning to end of the entire documentary, them filming every scene, and especially the kill scenes, and also them explaining how the makeup was done, which was very fascinating. I always love seeing people sort of making the craft and seeing it not from the movie perspective, but from somebody on set filming the filming of it. And there was a lot of really interesting parts where somebody's head would be shot, and I'm like, how did they do the big blood explosion behind his head on the wall? And they would show how they did that, and it was really fascinating. But they also showed the producer, whose name is Manazian. I didn't get his first name, but he was also the producer for the Friday the 13th movies, which is what I was hinting at earlier, is that this movie felt like Friday the 13th. Every 15 minutes or so, we got an awesome kill. And this producer, he's talked about on the Friday the 13th box set, he's talked about how to make a successful horror film, you have to have a kill every 15 seconds. And so whenever they were making a Friday the 13th movie, they were like, okay, start off with a kill. Bam. Okay, cool. Everybody's interested in the movie. Have your intro to the characters. Have a big group of characters show up at the cabin. Okay, have one of them walk away. Okay, bam, killed. Okay, now we want a scene where two people die. Okay, they're going off to go have sex. Kill them both in very grotesque ways. And this movie is structured the exact same way as a Friday the 13th film. And I noticed that right by the midpoint of the movie. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm watching Friday the 13th, but instead of horny teenagers, we have Santa Clauses. And it was great. Everything made sense to me after I heard that fact. So I was very happy that sort of my radar was on for that. But another part is that the producer also talked about how to sell a movie. And this was the most interesting part to me, because everything else was like, okay, this is what I wanted from a documentary. This is interesting. I like seeing the behind the scenes, but they just sit down with the producer and they're like, okay, how do you sell a horror movie? And he goes through the process and also talks about sort of how much money a horror movie makes, which is usually $10 to $15 million if it's a big hit. And he talks about how anytime that they wanted to stop making horror movies because the studio would make like 5 of them in a row and put a lot of money into them, they would decide, okay, we don't really want to do it anymore. And so they would release the last horror movie, and then it would go and make $10 to $15 million. And he was like, all right, I guess we have to keep making horror movies. And he talks about how the horror genre at this time in the 1980s and the mid 80s. He said how horror will never die because there's so many perspectives they can come in on, and also so many different horrific elements that you can use. And so for this movie, they were like, okay, we're going to use a slasher. We're going to have a holiday slasher. Okay, we're going to have a meta mystery. And they were like, all right, great. This is going to be a big hit. And it ended up being a pretty moderate success. They didn't say how much it made, but he talks about one of the movies that he produced called Mark of the Devil, which I think I have seen, but I can't remember really anything about it. They don't go deep into it, but the reason why that movie made so much money in the theaters is that they had bought $100,000 worth of vomit bags and handed it out in the theater, and nobody could go see the movie without the vomit bag. And so a lot of people, they were thinking like, oh my gosh, this movie's handing out vomit bags. Oh my gosh, friends, come on, let's see how nasty this movie is. And it ended up not really being much of anything, but they have the money now. They paid for the ticket, and it ended up making as much money as all the other ones. And he said it was a really great return on investment because they spent $100,000 and they got 15 million back. So he said you have to sort of, if you are not confident in a movie, do something fun like that. Have a poster that talks about the most explicit movie ever, and have, you know, a shot of somebody's head getting drilled in, just like in Abel Ferrara's Driller Killer. That movie did very well because of that cover. The rest of the movie is not really the most exciting. I've never really been a fan of a Driller Killer, although I've been wanting to rewatch it, but that is something that has always kind of lurked in my head. How do you sell a movie as a producer? And I've never really done heavy research on it, but it was really nice to get that section of the documentary on this release because I was enthralled. He talks about it for about 5 minutes or so, and it's fascinating. I was really kind of impressed by it, but there was one funny part where one of the actresses is like, can we go to a porn shop? And they're like, yeah, sure, because they needed props for a scene, and they sent her to go do it, and she wanted to, and she put on sunglasses and a fur coat and put a hat on so that nobody could recognize her, and the cameramen followed her into the sex shop, and they're looking at all these different porn magazines, porn VHSs. They're looking at dildos and fleshlights and all sorts of sex toys. And she's like, yeah, I don't really need these giant dildos. I need a penis that looks natural. And all of these are exaggerated, is what she says. And so she finally finds a penis and she buys it and then uses it for a scene. And I have no recollection of where the penis was used in the movie. I did not see one at all, so I have a feeling that they must have taken that shot out because there's a lot of deleted scenes on this movie that they included on this release, but I didn't actually see them because it's supposed to show during the interview with Alan Birkinshaw, which I guess there were scenes that they did show that were short, that were in like VHS quality, but I would have liked a separate special feature with restored footage of that so I could, you know, enjoy the movie or at least get a more kind of idea of what that penis was used for because I'm curious. But there's not much else to talk about with this movie. It's really great. I really enjoyed this. Great Christmas sort of film to watch. It's great. The killer looks great, which I don't think I've shown yet, but this is what he looks like. Really great kind of knife or scalpel, whatever. But I enjoyed it, and I think I showed this during the unboxing. Oh, I can't show that. But they have a Merry Christmas from Vinegar Syndrome, and you also have the signatures. Oh, sorry. The signatures of every Vinegar Syndrome employee, I believe. I can't recognize signatures, so I have a feeling it is. But This is a really solid release. I would recommend everybody to try and get it. It's past Black Friday, which I should have done all the reviews before, but I don't think this will sell out anytime soon. I haven't seen many people buy it yet, but yeah, I enjoyed it. Would I have bought this without my subscription? Probably. I love a good Christmas horror film, and it's a Christmas slasher film. I've enjoyed Deadly Games, aka Dollar Code Santa Claus. I've enjoyed Christmas Evil, which I've mentioned. I really kind of enjoy Jack Frost. That has also been put out by Vinegar Syndrome. Trying to see any other Christmas movies, but I don't think I see any on the shelf that I can see directly. But yeah, I would highly recommend this release. This is great. So that is all for today. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'm going to try and do the ranking now. The ranking video and kind of final thoughts, because the November package is coming soon, in like a day or two. So have a great rest of the weekend, everybody.